Diyarbakir is one of the largest cities in southeastern Turkey, situated on the banks of the Tigris River. It is the administrative capital of the Diyarbakır Province. With a population of about 930,000, it is the second largest city in Turkey's southeastern Anatolia region, after Gaziantep. Diyarbakir is considered the unofficial capital of Turkish Kurdistan. As such, it has been a focal point for conflict between Turkey's government and Kurdish insurgent groups. Names and etymology. The name Diyarbakir is inscribed as a mid on the sheath of a sword from the Assyrian period, and the same name was used in other contemporary Syriac and Arabic works. The Romans and Byzantines called the city Amida. Among the Artukid and Akoyanlu it was known as Black Amid for the dark color of its walls, while in the Zafaname, or eulogies in praise of military victories, it is called Black Fortress. In the Book of Dede Korkut and some other Turkish works it appears as Kara Himi. Following the Arab conquests in the 7th century, the Arab Baka tribe settled in this region, which became known as the Diyarbakir. In 1937, Ataturk visited Diyarbakir and, after expressing uncertainty on the exact etymology of the city, ordered that it be renamed Diyarbakir, which means land of copper in Turkish after the abundant resources of copper around the city. History. The earliest reference to the city comes from Assyrian records which identify it as being the capital of the Aramaean kingdom of Bit-Samani. In the 9th century BC, the city joined a rebellion against the Assyrian king Shalmaneser III. The city was later reduced to being a province of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. From 189 BCE to 384 CE, the region to the east and south of present Diyarbakir came under the rule of the Hellenistic kingdom of Corduene. Later, the Romans colonized the city and named it Amida, after the earlier Assyrian name Amid. During the Roman rule, the first city walls were constructed and later, the greater walls were built as per the command of the Roman Emperor Constantius II. After the Romans, the Persians came to power and were succeeded by the Muslim Arabs. It was the leader of the Arab Bekr tribe, Bekr bin Vail, who named the city Diyarbakir, meaning the country of Bakr, i.e. Arabs. Much later, in the Republican era, the city got its current name Diyarbakir, which was derived from the abundance of copper ore that exists here. After a few centuries, Diyarbakir came under the Ottoman Empire and earned the status of the capital of a large province. The city became the base of army troops who guarded the region against Persian invasion. Diyarbakir faced turbulence in the 20th century, particularly with the onset of World War I. The majority of the city's Syriac and Armenian population were massacred and deported during the Armenian Genocide in 1915. In 1925, the Kurdish population rose in the Sheikh Said rebellion against the newly established government of the Republic of Turkey, which was crushed by Turkish forces. Antiquity. The area around Diyarbakir has been inhabited by humans from the Stone Age, with tools from that period having been discovered in the nearby Hilla cave complex. The pre-pottery Neolithic B settlement of Kenu dates to over 10,000 years ago, and its excavated remains are on display at the Diyarbakir Museum. Another important site is Giriki Hachi in Tumulus in Eagle, the first major civilization to establish themselves in the region of what is now Diyarbakir were the Harran kingdom of the Mitanni. The city was first mentioned by Assyrian texts as the capital of a Semitic kingdom. It was then ruled by a succession of nearly every polity that controlled Upper Mesopotamia, such as the Aramaean Assyrians, Urartu-Armenians, Achaemenid Persians, Medes, Seleucids, and Parthians. The Roman Republic gained control of the city in 66 BC by when it was named Amida. In 359, Shapur II of Persia captured Amida after a siege of 73 days, which is vividly described by the Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus. Christian bishopric. Syriac Christianity took hold in the region between the 1st and 4th centuries AD, particularly amongst the Semitic Assyrians of the city. The earliest documented bishop of Amida was Simeon of the Church of the East, who took part in the First Council of Nicaea in 325, on behalf of the city's Assyrian and Aramaean Christians. Maurus was at the First Council of Constantinople in 381. In the next century, Saint Acacius of Amida was noted for having sold the church's gold and silver vessels to ransom and assist Persian prisoners of war. Byzantine Emperor Theodosius II divided the Roman province of Mesopotamia into two, and made Amida the capital of Mesopotamia Prima, and thereby also the metropolitan see for all the province's bishoprics. A 6th-century notitia episcopatuum indicates as suffragans of Amida the sees of Martyropolis, Inguila, Balabitin, Arsamosata, Sophene, Kitharos, Cefa and Zergma. The Annuario Pontifico adds Bethzada and Dadima. The names of several of the successors of Acacius are known, but their orthodoxy is unclear. The last whose orthodoxy is certain is Syriacus, a participant in the Second Council of Constantinople. Many bishops of the Byzantine Empire fled in the face of the Persian invasion of the early 7th century. With the resultant spread of the Jacobite Church, Michael the Syrian gives a list of Jacobite bishops of Amida down to the 13th century. At some stage, Amida became a see of the Armenian Christians. The bishops who held the see in 1650 and 1681 were in communion with the Holy See, and in 1727 Peter Darbophosian sent his profession of faith to Rome. He was succeeded by two more Catholic Armenians, Eugenius and Ioann of Smyrna, the latter of whom died in Constantinople in 1785. After a long vacancy, three more bishops followed. The diocese had some 5,000 Armenian Catholics in 1903, but it lost most of its population in the Armenian genocide. The last diocesan bishop of the see, Andreas Elias Celebiant, was killed with some 600 of his faithful in the summer of 1915. An eparchy for the local members of the Syriac Catholic Church was established in 1862. Ignatius Philip I Archius, who was its first bishop, was elected patriarch in 1866. He kept the governance of the see of Amida, which he exercised through a patriarchal vicar. The eparchy was united to that of Mardan in 1888. Persecution in Turkey during the First World War brought an end to the existence of both these Syrian residential sees. However, in 1966 a Chaldean Catholic archeparchy with jurisdiction over all Chaldean Catholic Turks was revived in Diyarbakir, with the city being both the episcopal see and location of the diocese's main cathedral. As of 2015, there are 2 Assyrian churches and 3 Armenian churches in at least periodic operation. 3 other churches are in ruins, all Armenian. 1 outside Sur district, 1 in it, and 1 in the citadel that is now part of a museum complex. No longer a residential bishopric, Amida is today listed by the Catholic Church as a titular see. Middle Ages. In 639, the city was captured by the Muslim conquests, and introduced to the religion of Islam. The city passed under Umayyad and then Abbasid control, but with the progressive fragmentation of the Abbasid Caliphate from the late 9th century, it periodically came under the rule of autonomous dynasties. Isa ibn al-Shaykh al-Shaybani and his descendants ruled the city and the wider Diyarbakir from 871 until 899. When Caliph al-Mu'tadid restored Abbasid control, but the area soon passed to another local dynasty, the Hamdanids. The latter were displaced by the Buyids in 978, who were in turn followed by the Marwanids a few years later. The Marwanids ruled until after the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, when the city came under the rule of the Mardan branch of the Oghuz Turks and then the Anatolian Beylik of the Arturkids. The whole area was then disputed between the Ilkhanate and Ayyubid dynasties for a century, after which it was taken over by the competing Turkic federations of the Karakoyanlu first and then the Aqquayanlu until the rise of the Persian Safavids, who naturally took over the city and the wider region. Safavids and Ottomans. Between the early 16th century and mid to late 17th century, the city and the much wider eastern Anatolia region was being heavily competed between the rivaling Persian Safavids and the Ottoman Turks, being passed on numerous times between the two arch-rivals. When it was firstly conquered by the Ottoman Turks in the 16th century by the campaigns of Bayklem Mehmet Pasha under the rule of Sultan Selim I, following the Battle of Chaldiran, they established an eyalet with its center in Diyarbakir. The Ottoman eyalet of Diyarbakir corresponded to Turkey's southeastern provinces today, a rectangular area between the Lake Urmia to Palu and from the southern shores of Lake Van to Cisre and the beginnings of the Syrian desert. Although its borders saw some changes over time, the city was an important military base for controlling this region and at the same time a thriving city noted for its craftsmen, producing glass and metalwork. For example, the doors of Mevlana's tomb in Konya were made in Diyarbakir, as were the gold and silver decorated doors of the tomb of Imam Azam Ebu Hanif in Baghdad. Ottoman rule was confirmed by the Peace of Amasya of 1555, which followed after the Ottoman-Safavid War. However, a recapture of the city followed by Safavid Persia ruled by Shah Abbas I during the Ottoman-Safavid War. Diyarbakir is referenced in Ivan Vasov's Under the Yoke, the most famous piece of classic Bulgarian literature. The book's protagonist, a young Bulgarian revolutionary, is arrested by the Ottoman authorities, exiled far from his homeland and imprisoned in Diyarbakir, from where he escapes to return to Bulgaria and take part in the April Uprising of 1876. In 1895, indigenous Armenians and Syriac Christians were subject to massacres in Diyarbakir. At the turn of the 19th century, the Christian population of the city was mainly made up of Armenians and Syriac Orthodox Christians. The city was also a site of ethnic cleansing of Armenians and Assyrians in 1915. Nearly 150,000 were deported from the city. Republic of Turkey. In the reorganization of the provinces, Diyarbakir was made administrative capital of the Diyarbakir province. During the 1980s and 1990s, at the peak of the Kurdistan Workers' Party insurgency, the population of the city grew dramatically as villages from remote areas where fighting was serious left or were forced to leave for the relative security of the city. After the cessation of hostilities between the PKK and the Turkish army, a large degree of normality returned to the city, with the Turkish government declaring an end to the 15-year period of emergency rule on the 30th of November 2002. Diyarbakir grew from a population of 30,000 in the 1930s to 65,000 by 1956, to 140,000 by 1970, to 400,000 by 1990, and eventually swelled to about 1.5 million by 1997. The 41-year-old American-Turkish Pirinklik Air Force Base near Diyarbakir, known as NATO's frontier post for monitoring the former Soviet Union and the Middle East, closed on the 30th of September 1997. This closure was the result of the general drawdown of U.S. bases in Europe and the improvement in space surveillance technology. The base housed sensitive electronic intelligence gathering systems that monitored the Middle East, the Caucasus, and Russia, according to a November 2006 survey by the Sur municipality, one of Diyarbakir's metropolitan municipalities. 72% of the inhabitants of the municipality use Kurdish most often in the daily speech, followed by Turkish, with small minorities of Assyrians, Armenians, and Yazidis still resident. After World War II, as the Kurdish population moved to urban centers, Diyarbakir gradually became predominantly Kurdish. Diyarbakir has been the victim of terror attacks in recent years. In 2008, a car bomb exploded in the city, killing 5 people, a blast for which nobody claimed responsibility. In 2015, a political rally of the People's Democratic Party was targeted by ISIL, killing 4 people and injuring over 100. And in 2016, 2 separate attacks in February and March, each killing 6 people. Between November 8, 2015 and May 15, 2016, large parts of Sur were destroyed in fighting between the Turkish military and the PKK. Economy. Historically, Diyarbakir produced wheat and sesame. They would preserve the wheat in warehouses, with coverings of straw and twigs from licorice trees. This system would allow the wheat to be preserved for up to 10 years. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Diyarbakir exported raisins, almonds, and apricots to Europe. Angora goats were raised, and wool and mohair was exported from Diyarbakir. Merchants would also come from Egypt, Istanbul, and Syria to purchase goats and sheep. Honey was also produced but not so much exported, but used by locals. Sericulture was observed in the area, too. Prior to World War I, Diyarbakir had an active copper industry, with 6 mines. 3 were active, with 2 being owned by locals and the 3rd being owned by the Turkish government. Tenorite was the primary type of copper mined. It was mined by hand by Kurds. A large portion of the ore was exported to England. The region also produced iron, gypsum, coal, chalk, lime, jet, and quartz, but primarily for local use. Demographics. Demographic history. At the turn of the 19th century, the Christian population of the city was mainly made up of Armenians and Syriac Orthodox Christians. Armenians had inhabited the town since the 8th century, while the Syriacs were probably descendants of surviving Aramaeans. Culture. Some jewelry making and other craftwork continues today, although the fame of the Diyarbakir's craftsmen has long passed. Folk dancing to the drum and zurna are a part of weddings and celebrations in the area. Cuisine. Diyarbakir is known for rich dishes of lamb which use spices such as black pepper, sumac and coriander, rice, bulgur and butter. The most famous specialty dish from Diyarbakir is meftun, which is made up of lamb meat and vegetable laced with garlic and sumac. Another known dish is kaburga dolmazi, which is a baked lamb's ribs stuffed with rice and many spices. Diyarbakir is also famous for its watermelons, which are exported internationally. One of the largest events in the city is the annually held Watermelon Festival. Main sites. Diyarbakir is surrounded by an almost intact, dramatic set of high walls of black basalt forming a 5.5 kilometers circle around the old city. There are 4 gates into the old city and 82 watchtowers on the walls, which were built in antiquity, restored and extended by the Roman Emperor Constantius II in 349. Diyarbakir boasts numerous medieval mosques and madrasas, including Great Mosque of Diyarbakir built by the Seljuk Turkish Sultan Malik Shah in the 11th century. The mosque, one of the oldest in Turkey, is constructed in alternating bands of black basalt and white limestone. The adjoining Mesudiye Madraseh Mesudiye was built at the same time, as was another prayer school in the city, Zinkiriye Madraseh Zinkiriye. The Harampasa Cami Mizkefte Bayrampasa, an Ottoman mosque built in 1572 by the governor of Diyarbakir, Bayram Pasha, noted for the well-constructed arches at the entrance. Sheikh Matar Mosque with Dortalugli Minaret Mizkefte Karling, built by Qasim Khan of the Aqquayanlu. Fatih Pasa Cami Mizkefte Fethi Pasa, built in 1520 by Diyarbakir's first Ottoman governor, Bayli Mehmet Pasa, the city's earliest Ottoman building. It is decorated with fine tilework. Hazreti Süleyman Cami Mizkefte Hazreti Suleyman 1155–1169 Suleiman, son of Khalid bin Velid, who died capturing the city from the Arabs, is buried here along with his companions. Husrev Pasa Cami Mizkefte Husrev Pasa, the mosque of the second Ottoman governor, 1512–1528. Originally the building was intended to be a school. Iskandar Pasa Cami Mizkefte Iskandar Pasa, a mosque of an Ottoman governor, an attractive building in black and white stone, built in 1551. Melik Ahmed Cami Melik Ahmed Pasa, a 16th-century mosque noted for its tiled prayer niche for the double stairway up the minaret. Nabi Cami Mizkefte Pegzember, an Aqquayanlu mosque of single-domed stone construction from the 16th century. Nabi Cami means the Mosque of the Prophet, and is so named because of the number of inscriptions in honor of the Prophet on its minaret. Safa Cami Mizkefte Palo, built in 1532 by the Aqquayanlu tribe. Famous churches include St. Geragos Armenian Church, first built in 1519. The current structure is from 1883, and was recently restored after a long period of disuse. The Syriac Orthodox Church of Our Lady was first constructed as a pagan temple in the 1st century BCE. The current construction dates back to the 3rd century, has been restored many times, and is still in use as a place of worship today. Marpetain Catholic Chaldean Church, built in 1681. There are a few other churches in the city. Museums. The Archaeological Museum contains artifacts from the Neolithic period through the early Bronze Age, Assyrian, Euro-Roman, Byzantine, Arturkids, Seljuk Turk, Aqquayanlu, and Ottoman Empire periods. Kayhit-Sitki-Tarashi Museum, the home of the late poet and a classic example of a traditional Diyarbakir home. The birthplace of poet Ziya Gökalp, preserved as a museum to his life and works. Ahmet Arif Literature Museum Library. Historic bridges. The Dikil Bridge, an 11th-century bridge with 10 arches. Climate. Diyarbakir has a borderline Mediterranean climate and hot, dry summer continental climate. Summer are very hot and very dry, due to its location on the Mesopotamian plain, which is subject to hot winds from the deserts of Syria and Iraq to the south. The highest recorded temperature was 44.8 degrees Celsius on the 28th of August 1998. Winters are cold and wet and with frosty nights. Snowfall is quite common between the months of December and March, snowing for a week or two. The lowest recorded temperature was -23.4 degrees Celsius on the 30th of December 2006. Notable people born in the city: Etius of Amida, a Greek physician and medical writer native to Diyarbakir. Abdul Qadir Aksu, a former interior minister. Ahmed Arif, poet. Aziz Yildirim, president of Fenerbahçe SK Sports Club. Kayhit Sitki Tarashi, poet. Sahan Haspolati, footballer for Galatasaray. K. Gazi Yasargil, medical scientist and neurosurgeon. Hessen Mead, writer. Hovsep Pushman, Armenian-American painter. Hikmet Seaton, a former foreign minister and former NATO senior civilian representative in Afghanistan. Leyla Sana, politician. Lokman Polar, writer. Agop Handanyan, physician and writer. Mehmet Emin Bozarslan, writer. Mehmet Polar, actor. Kevork Malikian, actor. Norme Faiq, writer. Osman Baydemir, politician. Rupin Zartarian, Armenian writer. Rojen Barnas, writer. Songalodin, actress. Suleiman Natsif, poet. Ziago Kalp, sociologist and writer. Migurdik Margasian, writer. Koskan Sabah, musician. Saif al-Din al-Amidi, Islamic theologian and legal scholar of the Shafi'i school. Zabelsi Boyajian, Armenian painter and writer.